The late afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows of the Blackwood mansion, casting long shadows across the marble floors. Another extravagant party was in full swing, with the sounds of clinking champagne glasses and polite laughter filling the air. Sophia Blackwood stifled a yawn as she nodded along to whatever the gray-haired investor was saying about market projections. At 19, she had attended more of these business gatherings than she could count, each one blending into the next in a haze of designer dresses and meaningless small talk. "Excuse me for a moment," she said with a practiced smile, slipping away before the man could launch into another story about his golf handicap. Sophia grabbed a flute of champagne from a passing server and drifted toward the edge of the ballroom. Her father, Richard Blackwood, stood in the center of a circle of admirers, gesturing animatedly as he described his latest tech acquisition. The Forbes magazine last month had estimated his worth at just over $11 billion, a fact he mentioned in nearly every conversation. Sophia took a sip of her drink and smoothed down the front of her blue silk dress. She was tired of playing the role of the perfect daughter, polite, poised, and utterly bored. These parties were all the same. Important people trying to impress other important people, with Sophia and her father serving as the perfect hosts. "I need some air," she muttered to herself, wandering out of the main ballroom and into the quieter corridors of their sprawling home. The East Wing was usually empty during events like this. Sophia kicked off her uncomfortable heels and padded barefoot across the cool floor, enjoying the brief moment of freedom. As she rounded the corner toward the kitchen, she nearly collided with someone coming the other way. "Oh, I'm sorry," said a soft voice. Sophia stepped back to find herself face to face with a boy about her age, maybe a year or two younger. He wore the black pants and white button-up shirt of the serving staff, but she recognized him immediately. It was Elena's son, the quiet boy who sometimes helped his mother with the housekeeping on weekends. "No, it's my fault," Sophia said, surprised to find herself apologizing. She rarely bothered with the staff beyond giving instructions. "You're Elena's son, right?" The boy nodded, his dark eyes cautious. "Yes, Miguel." "Miguel," she repeated, studying him with new interest. She'd seen him around the house for years but had never really noticed him before. He was tall and lean, with warm brown skin and thick black hair that curled slightly at the ends. There was something in his expression, a thoughtfulness that stood out among the vapid smiles she'd been surrounded by all evening. "I was just bringing more ice to the bar," he explained, holding up a large silver bucket. "Of course." Sophia glanced back toward the noise of the party, then made a sudden decision. "Actually, Miguel, how about you take a break for a minute?" His eyebrows drew together in confusion. "I should really get this to the bartender." "He can wait," Sophia said, the hint of a mischievous smile playing on her lips. She was bored, and here was someone, new and different. "Come with me." Without waiting for his response, she turned and walked down the corridor, knowing he would follow. The power dynamic was too established for him to refuse. Sure enough, she heard his reluctant footsteps behind her as she led the way to the smaller sitting room, where the grand piano sat bathed in the golden evening light. "Do you play?" she asked, gesturing to the gleaming Steinway that cost more than most people's homes. Miguel carefully set the ice bucket down on a side table. "I should really get back to work." My father is too busy impressing his guests to notice," Sophia interrupted, waving away his concern. "Besides, I'm bored out of my mind and I need some entertainment." She walked over to the piano and ran her fingers lightly across the polished wood. Years of expensive lessons had left her with just enough skill to play simple pieces at family gatherings, but she had never developed any real passion for it. "So, do you play?" she asked again, looking up at him expectantly. Miguel hesitated, his eyes darting toward the door. "Not really?" "Oh, come on," Sophia pressed, enjoying the slight discomfort she was causing. It was a small rebellion against the stifling perfection of her world. "Just try it. For fun." A flash of something, annoyance perhaps, crossed his face before he carefully controlled his expression. "Miss Blackwood, I should get back to my duties." "Sophia," she corrected him, "and just one song. Then you can go back to being the perfect servant." The words came out more cutting than she'd intended, but she didn't take them back. Instead, she patted the piano bench beside her. "Please?" Miguel stood frozen for a moment, clearly weighing his options. Sophia knew he couldn't really refuse her. His mother's job might depend on keeping the Blackwoods happy. The thought sent a twinge of guilt through her, but she pushed it away. "Just a short one," he finally said, approaching the piano with surprising reluctance. Sophia moved over to give him space on the bench, catching a faint scent of dish soap and something citrusy as he sat down. She watched with mild amusement as he positioned his hands over the keys, expecting him to pick out a simple melody or perhaps admit he didn't actually know how to play. At that moment, Elena appeared in the doorway, a stack of clean napkins in her arms. Her eyes widened when she saw her son at the piano with the boss's daughter. "Miguel," she called, her voice tinged with worry. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, Elena," Sophia assured her with a casual wave. "I just asked Miguel to play something for me. Will only be a minute." Elena looked at her son with an unreadable expression, something passing between them that Sophia couldn't interpret. Then she gave a tight nod. "The bartender was asking about the ice," she said quietly. "I'll bring it right after," Miguel promised, his hand still hovering over the keys. Elena lingered for a moment before continuing down the hall, throwing one last glance over her shoulder. Sophia turned back to Miguel with a triumphant smile. "Now you have to play something. I've created a whole situation." Miguel took a deep breath, his shoulders rising and falling under the crisp white shirt. Sophia expected him to rush through something basic just to satisfy her request and escape the awkward situation. "I don't really know many pieces," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Anything is fine," Sophia insisted, settling in to be amused by his amateur efforts. Perhaps she'd even compliment him afterward, regardless of how terrible he was. A small kindness to make up for putting him on the spot. Miguel nodded, positioning his long fingers over the keys. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, and Sophia prepared herself to hear a stumbling rendition of Chopsticks or Heart and Soul. But when his fingers touched the ivory keys, everything changed. The first notes filled the air, rich, confident, and hauntingly beautiful. Sophia's smirk faded as Miguel began to play what she recognized as Debussy's Clair de Lune, his hands moving with grace and precision that spoke of years of practice. The delicate melody floated through the room, each note perfectly weighted and timed. Sophia stared at him in disbelief, watching as his initial stiffness melted away. His expression transformed completely. The cautious, reserved server boy was gone, replaced by someone entirely different. His eyes were half closed, his body swaying slightly with the music, completely lost in the piece. A few guests wandering the hallway paused at the doorway, drawn by the unexpected concert. Even from the main ballroom, the music carried, causing conversations to quiet and heads to turn. Sophia felt her cheeks grow warm with embarrassment. What had she done? She'd meant to have a laugh at this boy's expense, to briefly escape her boredom by watching him fumble through a simple tune. Instead, she was witnessing something extraordinary, raw talent that made her own years of expensive lessons look like child's play. As Miguel played the final delicate notes, the room had grown completely silent. Several guests had gathered in the doorway, expressions of surprise and appreciation on their faces. Somewhere in the crowd, Sophia spotted her father, his eyebrows raised in curiosity. The last note lingered in the air, and for a moment, no one moved or spoke. Then, as if waking from a trance, Miguel seemed to remember where he was. His eyes flew open, and he quickly pulled his hands back from the keys, that careful mask of subservience sliding back into place. "I'm sorry," he said softly, though Sophia couldn't imagine what he was apologizing for. "I should get back to work." He stood up so quickly that the piano bench scraped against the hardwood floor. Without meeting anyone's eyes, he grabbed the bucket of now melting ice and moved through the small crowd that parted to let him pass. "Who was that young man?" Sophia heard someone ask her father. "I believe he's the son of one of our housekeepers," Richard Blackwood replied, his tone indicating surprise and perhaps a hint of approval. Sophia remained seated at the piano, her fingers resting lightly on the keys that had just produced such beautiful music. She felt strangely hollow, as if something fundamental had shifted inside her. The boy she had barely noticed, the son of their maid who she'd intended to use for a moment's amusement, possessed a gift she could never hope to match. For the first time in a very long time, Sophia Blackwood felt small, and she knew with absolute certainty that she had to find Miguel again. The morning after the party, Sophia woke with the haunting melody of Claire de Lune still playing in her head. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment when Miguel's fingers had first touched the piano keys. The look on his face, that transformation from reluctant server to passionate musician, kept flashing in her mind. She rolled over and grabbed her phone, scrolling mindlessly through social media to distract herself from the uncomfortable feeling in her chest. Was it guilt? Embarrassment? She wasn't used to either emotion, and she didn't particularly enjoy the experience. A gentle knock sounded at her door. "Miss Sophia? Your breakfast is ready," called a familiar voice. Sophia sat up quickly. "Elena, is that you?" "Yes, miss. Your father asked me to bring up your breakfast before I start on the guest rooms." "Come in," Sophia called. Suddenly wide awake, Elena entered carrying a tray with fresh fruit, yogurt, and a steaming mug of coffee. Her uniform was crisply pressed as always, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. She moved with quiet efficiency, placing the tray on the small table by the window. "Will there be anything else, miss?" Elena asked, her tone polite but distant. Sophia studied the woman who had worked in their home for, how long had it been? 8 years, 10? She realized with a jolt that she barely knew anything about Elena, beyond her excellent housekeeping skills and unfailing politeness. "Your son plays beautifully," Sophia said, watching Elena's face carefully. Something flickered in the older woman's eyes. Pride, perhaps, but also caution. "Thank you, miss. He enjoys music very much." Sophia slid out of bed and walked to the table, wrapping her silk robe more tightly around herself. "Where did he learn? Has he had lessons?" Elena hesitated, her hands clasped in front of her. "No, miss." "No formal lessons?" "That's impossible," Sophia blurted out. "Nobody plays like that without training." A small, proud smile briefly crossed Elena's face. "Miguel has always had a good ear. He taught himself mostly. He practices whenever he can." "On what? Do you have a piano at home?" Sophia asked, trying to imagine where a housekeeper and her son might keep a grand piano. "We have a small keyboard," Elena replied. "It was a gift from my late husband before Miguel was born. Nothing fancy, just enough keys to practice on." Sophia thought about her own gleaming Steinway, which she hadn't touched in months despite years of expensive lessons. "So he just figured it out? By himself?" "He watches videos online and listens to music all the time," Elena explained, her voice warming slightly as she spoke about her son. "When he was little, maybe 7, I caught him trying to play a lullaby I used to sing to him. He picked it out note by note until he got it right. I've never seen anyone so determined." Sophia took a sip of her coffee, unsure how to process this information. "Does he want to be a musician?" "Professionally, I mean." Elena's smile faded. "What we want and what is possible are not always the same thing, miss." The weight of those words hung in the air between them. The employer's daughter who could have anything she wanted, and the woman who cleaned their home 6 days a week. "I'd like to speak with him," Sophia said suddenly. "Is he here today?" Elena shook her head. "No, miss. He has classes at the community college on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He works here on weekends and some evenings." "What's he studying?" Sophia asked, genuinely curious now. "Business administration," Elena replied, a hint of pride in her voice. "He's very smart. He got a partial scholarship." Sophia nodded slowly, trying to reconcile the image of the passionate pianist with a business student. Why not music? Elena's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "We cannot afford music school, miss. And business is more practical. More opportunities." The unspoken reality of their different worlds hung between them. Sophia felt a twinge of something unfamiliar. Perhaps it was the first real understanding of privilege she'd ever experienced. "Thank you, Elena," she said finally. "That's all for now." After Elena left, Sophia sat by the window picking at her breakfast, unable to shake the thought of Miguel hunched over a small keyboard in some tiny apartment, teaching himself to play like a concert pianist while studying business because it was practical. For 3 days, Sophia found herself thinking about Miguel at odd moments. During her morning yoga session, while shopping with friends, even during dinner with her father, the memory of that music would float back to her, along with the uncomfortable feeling that had settled in her chest. On Friday evening, she made her way down to the kitchen, an area of the house she rarely visited. The staff was preparing for another dinner party, this one smaller than the last. Elena was arranging flowers at the center island, her swift, practiced movements creating an elegant display from simple blooms. "Is Miguel coming in tonight?" Sophia asked without preamble. Elena looked up, surprise crossing her features. "Yes, miss. He's helping with serving." "What time?" "He should be here any minute," Elena replied, her tone cautious. "Is there a problem?" "No problem," Sophia assured her. "I just wanted to speak with him." As if on cue, the service entrance opened and Miguel walked in. He wore the same black pants and white shirt as before, his hair slightly damp as if he'd just showered. He stopped short when he saw Sophia, his expression guarded. "Good evening. Miss Blackwood," he said formally. "Hi, Miguel," Sophia replied, suddenly unsure what to say now that he was actually standing in front of her. "Do you have a minute?" He glanced at his mother, who gave a small nod. "Of course." "Let's go to the music room," Sophia suggested. Miguel followed her silently through the house. When they reached the room with the piano, he remained standing near the door, as if unwilling to approach the instrument again. "You never told me you could play like that," Sophia said. Breaking the awkward silence, Miguel shifted uncomfortably. "You didn't ask." The simple response made her wince internally. Of course she hadn't asked. She'd never thought to ask anything about him before. "Where did you learn Debussy?" "It's not exactly beginner music." Miguel's posture relaxed slightly at the mention of the composer. "I heard it in a movie when I was 13. I looked it up after and taught myself by watching videos and listening to recordings." "Just like that?" Sophia asked, unable to hide her disbelief. A hint of a smile touched his lips. "No, it took months to get it right. I practiced every day." Sophia moved toward the piano, running her fingers along its polished surface. "My father hired the best teachers money could buy. 8 years of lessons, and I still can't play half as well as you." "It's not about the teachers," Miguel said quietly. "It's about how much you want it." The simple truth of his words struck her. She had never really wanted it. The piano had been just another box to check in her privileged upbringing, like French lessons and competitive horseback riding. "What else can you play?" she asked, genuinely interested. Miguel hesitated, then moved toward the piano almost unconsciously, drawn to it like a magnet. "A little bit of everything. Classical mostly, some jazz. Whatever I can find tutorials for online." "Show me something else," Sophia said, but this time it wasn't a command. It was a request. Miguel sat down at the bench, his hands hovering over the keys for a moment. Then he began to play, not the delicate Debussy from before, but something rich and passionate that Sophia didn't recognize. His fingers danced across the keys with confidence, his body swaying slightly with the rhythm. The music filled the room, complex and emotional, building to a crescendo that made Sophia's heart beat faster. When the last notes faded, Sophia realized she'd been holding her breath. "What was that?" she asked. "Rachmaninoff, Prelude in C-sharp minor," Miguel replied, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "It's one of my favorites." "You learned that by watching videos?" He nodded. "And lots of practice." He ran his fingers lightly over the keys without pressing them down. "This piano is amazing. The action is perfect." "You could use it," Sophia heard herself say. "To practice, I mean. When you're not working or in school." Miguel looked up at her, clearly startled by the offer. "That's very kind, but I couldn't." "Why not?" "It just sits here most of the time," she insisted, warming to the idea. "You could come early before your shifts or stay late, whenever the room isn't being used." He studied her face as if trying to determine her motives. "Why would you do that?" It was a fair question. Why would she? Sophia wasn't entirely sure herself, but she knew she wanted to hear him play again. "Because it's a waste," she said finally, "having this beautiful piano and no one who can really play it." Miguel seemed to consider this, his fingers still resting lightly on the keys. "I should get to work. Your father's guests will be arriving soon." "Think about it," Sophia urged as he stood. He nodded once before heading to the door. "Thank you for the offer." After he left, Sophia remained in the music room thinking about the way his entire demeanor changed when he played. It was as if the music released something in him that he kept carefully controlled the rest of the time. The dinner party that evening felt particularly tedious. Sophia found herself watching Miguel as he moved quietly among the guests, refilling wine glasses and clearing plates. His face was a careful mask of polite detachment, showing no trace of the passion she'd glimpsed when his hands touched the piano keys. It was strange to think, that the same person who played Rachmaninoff with such feeling was now silently collecting empty cocktail glasses. Stranger still to realize that until a few days ago she'd never really seen him at all. As the evening wore on, Sophia made a decision. She would find a way to help Miguel develop his talent. She wasn't sure exactly how yet, but for the first time in a long while she felt genuinely excited about something. This, she thought, watching him move efficiently through the crowd, was something real, something worth her time and attention. She just had to convince him to accept her help. A week passed before Sophia saw Miguel again. She found herself listening for piano music whenever she was home, but the grand Steinway remained silent. On Saturday morning, she wandered down to the kitchen earlier than usual, knowing the weekend staff would be preparing for the day. Elena looked up from where she was organizing the pantry, surprise crossing her features at the sight of Sophia in sweatpants and a t-shirt. "Good morning, Miss Sophia. Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine," Sophia replied, helping herself to coffee from the freshly brewed pot. "Is Miguel working today?" "Yes, he'll be here at noon," Elena said, a hint of wariness in her tone. "He's helping with the garden today. Your father mentioned wanting the hedges trimmed." Sophia nodded, leaning against the counter. "I haven't seen him practicing on the piano." "Did he not consider my offer?" Elena carefully folded a dish towel, taking her time before answering. "He considered it. He's not sure it would be appropriate." "Why not?" Sophia asked, genuinely confused. "I offered." "Yes, but—" Elena paused, clearly choosing her words carefully. "Miguel is very proud, and very aware of boundaries." The implication hung in the air between them, boundaries between employer and employee, between the billionaire's daughter and the housekeeper's son, boundaries that Sophia had rarely thought about until now. "It's just a piano," Sophia insisted, though she knew it wasn't that simple. Elena smiled, gently. "To you, perhaps." "To Miguel," she shook her head. "May I speak frankly, Miss Sophia?" Sophia nodded, oddly nervous about what Elena might say. "My son has loved music since he was very small. When he was 10, his music teacher at school told me he had a special talent. She wanted him to audition for a youth program at the conservatory." Elena's eyes grew distant with the memory. "The audition fee was $300. For you, that's nothing. For us that month, it was the difference between paying rent or not." Sophia felt her cheeks grow warm. $300 was less than what she'd spent on lunch yesterday with friends. "Did he audition?" she asked quietly. Elena shook her head. "We couldn't take the risk. If he didn't get in, that money would be gone. So instead, he practiced more on his little keyboard. He watched videos online. He borrowed books from the library." She looked directly at Sophia now, her gaze steady. "Miguel has had to work twice as hard for every opportunity. Nothing has ever been handed to him. So when someone suddenly offers something for nothing, he doesn't trust it." Sophia finished the thought.
"He doesn't trust me. It's not personal," Elena assured her.
"It's just experience." The conversation stayed with Sophia all morning. By noon, she had made up her mind and headed out to the gardens where she knew Miguel would be working. She found him by the east wall, carefully trimming the tall hedges. He wore work jeans and a faded t-shirt instead of his usual server uniform, and there were headphones in his ears. He didn't notice her approach until she was almost beside him. "Oh." He quickly pulled out his earbuds and straightened up. "Miss Blackwood, did you need something?" "What are you listening to?" she asked, ignoring his question. Miguel hesitated before answering. "Chopin, Nocturne in E-flat major. For fun or for study?" A small smile touched his lips. "Both, I guess. I'm trying to figure out the middle section." Sophia took a deep breath. "I talked to your mom this morning. About why you haven't taken me up on my offer to use the piano." Miguel's expression closed off immediately. "I've been busy with school and work." "She told me about the audition when you were 10, Sophia pressed on. "The one you couldn't afford." Miguel's jaw tightened. He set down the hedge trimmers and wiped his hands on his jeans. "With all due respect, Miss Blackwood, I don't need your pity." "It's not pity," Sophia insisted. "It's—" She struggled to find the right word. "It's admiration, actually." That caught him off guard. "Admiration? You played beautifully. Better than anyone I've ever heard in person. And you did it all on your own without the advantages I've had my entire life." Sophia kicked at a small stone on the path. "Do you know how many lessons I've had? How many tutors and coaches and private instructors? And I've never been half as good at anything as you are at piano. Miguel was watching her carefully, his expression guarded but attentive. I'm not offering you charity, she continued. I'm being selfish, actually. I want to hear you play, and I want to understand how someone gets that good without all the stuff that I thought was necessary. A bird chirped loudly from a nearby tree, filling the silence that stretched between them. The piano is collecting dust, Sophia added finally. It's stupid. Miguel seemed to be weighing his response. Finally, he said, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not sure your father would approve of the help using the piano for personal reasons. It was a valid point. Richard Blackwood was particular about his possessions and the clear line between family and staff. What if I asked him? Sophia suggested. Formally, I mean. To give you permission? Miguel looked skeptical. Why would you do that? Because it's the right thing to do, she said simply. And because I want to. Something shifted in Miguel's expression, a slight softening around the eyes, perhaps. I should get back to work. Your father wants these hedges done by 3. Sophia nodded, recognizing that she wouldn't get an answer right now. Think about it, okay? As she walked back to the house, Sophia tried to imagine how she would approach her father with this request. Richard Blackwood wasn't cruel, but he was practical to a fault and had clear ideas about how things should be done. He had paid for Sophia's extensive piano lessons not because she loved music, but because he believed it was part of a well-rounded education for someone of her social standing. Would he understand why she wanted to help Miguel? Would he care? That evening, Sophia found her father in his study, reviewing documents on his tablet. She knocked on the open door and he glanced up, gesturing for her to enter. Dad, can I talk to you about something? Richard Blackwood set down his tablet and gave her his full attention, a rarity that still made her slightly nervous. Of course, sweetheart. What is it? Sophia sat in the leather chair across from his desk. You remember at the party last week when someone was playing the piano in the small sitting room? Her father nodded. Yes, quite remarkable. Elena's boy, wasn't it? What was his name again? Miguel, Sophia supplied. He's incredible, isn't he? He was certainly impressive, her father agreed. Especially for someone without formal training. Elena mentioned he's self-taught. Sophia leaned forward. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. Our piano just sits there most of the time. I was thinking maybe Miguel could use it sometimes. To practice. Richard Blackwood's expression was unreadable. You want one of our staff to use the Steinway? He wouldn't damage it, Sophia quickly assured him. He clearly knows how to handle a piano properly, and he could come when he's not working so it wouldn't interfere with his duties. Her father studied her face. This seems important to you, why? It was a fair question, and Sophia wasn't entirely sure of the answer herself. I guess it just seems like a waste. Having this amazing instrument and the only person in the house who can really play it isn't allowed to touch it. I see. Her father leaned back in his chair. And what would Elena's son get out of this arrangement? Practice time on a proper piano, Sophia said. Maybe I could even help him record some pieces to build a portfolio. For college applications or something. Richard Blackwood was silent for a long moment, his fingers steepled under his chin. Finally, he said, You've never shown much interest in helping others before, Sophia. The comment stung, even though she knew it was true. Maybe it's time I started. Something that might have been approval flickered in her father's eyes. I'll consider it. On one condition. What's that? I want to hear him play myself. Not just overhearing from another room, but a proper demonstration. Sophia's heart lifted. Really, when? Tomorrow evening, her father decided. After dinner. If he's as talented as you say, we can discuss arrangements. The next day, Sophia found Miguel helping in the garage, organizing tools. His expression when she told him about her conversation with her father was a mixture of disbelief and anxiety. Your father wants me to play for him? Tonight? It's not an audition, Sophia assured him, though in a way it was exactly that. He just wants to hear you play. Miguel ran a hand through his hair. I don't know, Sophia. She noted that he'd dropped the Miss Blackwood for the first time. It's a good opportunity, isn't it? If my dad approves, you'll have access to a concert-quality piano whenever you want. And if he doesn't approve? Miguel asked quietly. Then at least we tried, Sophia said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. What's the worst that could happen? The question hung between them, both aware that for Miguel the stakes were higher than they were for her. This wasn't just about access to a piano. It was about crossing invisible lines, changing established dynamics. Okay, he finally agreed. What time? 8 o'clock, Sophia told him. In the music room. Wear whatever you want, it's not formal. Miguel nodded, his expression serious. Thank you for doing this. Don't thank me yet, Sophia said with a small smile. Save it for when my dad says yes. That evening, Sophia found herself pacing nervously in the hallway outside the music room. Her father was already inside, checking emails on his phone while he waited. When Miguel arrived precisely at 8, Sophia was struck by the transformation. He wore dark jeans and a simple button-down shirt, not formal but a clear step up from his work clothes. His hair was neatly combed and he carried himself with quiet dignity. Ready? She asked. Miguel took a deep breath and nodded. As ready as I'll ever be. When they entered the music room, Richard Blackwood stood and extended his hand. Good evening, Miguel. Sophia tells me you're quite talented. Thank you for this opportunity, sir. Miguel replied, shaking his hand firmly. No need for formality tonight, Richard said, gesturing toward the piano. Please, whenever you're ready. Miguel approached the instrument with reverence, taking a moment to settle himself on the bench. He flexed his fingers, took a deep breath, and then began to play. The piece started softly, almost tentatively, but soon built into something magnificent. Sophia didn't recognize it, but she could see from her father's face that he did. The music filled the room, complex and emotional. Miguel's fingers flying across the keys with precision and passion that transformed him once again from the quiet, reserved young man into an artist fully absorbed in his craft. When the final notes faded, there was a moment of complete silence. Then Richard Blackwood did something Sophia rarely saw. He applauded genuinely and enthusiastically. Liszt's Hungarian Rhapsody, he said, shaking his head in amazement. Remarkable, truly remarkable. Miguel ducked his head slightly, a flush of pleasure coloring his cheeks. Thank you, sir. Where did you learn to play like that without formal training? Richard asked, moving closer to the piano. YouTube, mostly, Miguel admitted, and I listen to recordings over and over until I understand how the pieces work. Richard turned to Sophia, something like approval in his eyes. I think we can certainly arrange for Miguel to have access to the piano when it's not in use. In fact, he paused, seeming to consider something. I may have a more substantial proposal. But that's a conversation for another day. Relief and happiness washed over Sophia. She caught Miguel's eye and smiled, receiving a small, grateful smile in return. As they left the music room, her father heading back to his study and Miguel preparing to leave for the night, Sophia felt something unfamiliar. A sense of having done something genuinely good, not for herself but for someone else. It was a feeling she could get used to. Over the next few weeks, the Blackwood mansion filled with music. Miguel came 3 evenings a week after his classes, slipping into the music room where the grand piano waited. Sometimes Sophia sat quietly in the corner, homework spread across her lap, listening as he practiced. Other times she left him alone, understanding that he needed space to work without an audience. One evening in late October, Sophia paused outside the music room, caught by a melody she didn't recognize. It wasn't the usual classical pieces Miguel favored. This was something different, something new. She pushed the door open slightly and peeked in. Miguel sat at the piano, his back to the door, completely absorbed in the music. His fingers moved confidently across the keys, creating a hauntingly beautiful piece that seemed to tell a story. Joyful in places, melancholy in others, building to an emotional crescendo before settling into a peaceful resolution. When the last note faded, Sophia couldn't help herself. That was beautiful. What was it? Miguel started, turning quickly on the bench. Sophia, I didn't know you were there. Sorry, she said, stepping fully into the room. I didn't want to interrupt. What was that piece? I don't think I've heard it before. Miguel looked down at the piano keys, suddenly shy. You haven't, I wrote it. You wrote that? Sophia moved closer to the piano, genuinely amazed. Like, composed it yourself? He nodded, a flush creeping up his neck. I've been working on it for a while. It's still rough in some places. It didn't sound rough to me, she said, sitting beside him on the bench. It sounded perfect. I had no idea you composed music. I've always made up little things, he admitted, but I never had a real piano to work with before. It's different when you can hear how it's supposed to sound. Sophia studied his face, noting the quiet pride in his eyes. Does it have a name? Your composition? Mother's hands, he said softly. It's for my mom. Something warm unfurled in Sophia's chest. That's really beautiful. Miguel shrugged, clearly uncomfortable with the praise. It's just something I wanted to do for her. She's worked so hard all her life. Her hands tell that story. They're strong but gentle. Sophia thought about Elena's hands. Always busy, always capable, whether arranging flowers or folding laundry or cooking meals. She'd never really noticed them before. You should record it, she suggested, as a gift for her. Maybe, Miguel said, his fingers idly tracing patterns on the keys without pressing them down. Someday, why not now? Sophia pulled out her phone. We could do a simple recording right here. Miguel hesitated. It's not finished yet. Then finish it, she encouraged. I can help if you want. My father has professional recording equipment in his home office for his video conferences. We could use that. Your father has been very generous already, Miguel said carefully. I don't want to push my luck. Sophia waved away his concern. He's barely here these days anyway. He's in Singapore until next week. Miguel seemed to consider the idea, his expression thoughtful. I'd need to polish a few sections first. Take all the time you need, Sophia said. Just let me know when you're ready. Their conversation was interrupted by a gentle knock at the door. Elena stood in the doorway, her expression apologetic. I'm sorry to interrupt, but Miguel, we should be going soon. You have that big exam tomorrow. Right, Miguel said, gathering his sheet music. I lost track of time. As he packed up, Sophia had a sudden thought. Hey, Elena, are you free this Sunday? Both of you? Elena looked surprised. Sunday is our day off, so yes, great. I was thinking maybe we could all have lunch. There's this amazing Italian place downtown that I think you'd both like. Elena and Miguel exchanged a quick glance. A silent communication passing between them. That's very kind of you. Miss Sophia, Elena began carefully. But it's just lunch, Sophia insisted, suddenly very aware of how important this invitation felt. As friends. The word hung in the air between them, friends, not employer and employees. Not the billionaire's daughter and the housekeeper and her son. Just friends. We'd be happy to join you, Miguel said finally with a small nod from his mother. Thank you. After they left, Sophia sat at the piano, lightly touching the keys where Miguel's fingers had been, thinking about the composition he'd created for his mother. There was something about it that moved her deeply, not just the beautiful music itself, but the love and gratitude behind it. For the first time in her life, Sophia felt like she was seeing beyond the bubble of privilege she'd always lived in, and what she saw made her uncomfortable with who she'd been before. Sunday arrived with perfect fall weather, crisp air, golden sunlight, and trees showing off their autumn colors. Sophia waited outside the restaurant, nervously checking her watch. She'd chosen a nice place but not too fancy, somewhere with excellent food where no one would feel out of place, regardless of what they were wearing. When she spotted Elena and Miguel walking toward her, she felt oddly nervous, as if this were some kind of test she might fail. You found it okay? She asked as they approached. Your directions were perfect, Elena assured her, looking lovely in a simple blue dress Sophia had never seen before. Miguel nodded in greeting, hands in the pockets of his dark jeans. He wore a light sweater over a button-down shirt and looked nothing like the server who moved quietly through Blackwood parties, or the worker who trimmed hedges in the garden. I've already got our table, Sophia said, leading them inside. They make the best pasta in the city. The meal started with a slight awkwardness that gradually melted away as they talked. Sophia discovered that Elena had grown up in a small coastal town in California, the daughter of a fisherman. She'd met Miguel's father, Rafael, when they were both working at a hotel in San Francisco. She as a housekeeper. He as a sous chef with dreams of opening his own restaurant. Rafael was so talented, Elena said, a wistful smile playing on her lips. He could create a meal out of nothing. Just like Miguel with music. What happened to him? Sophia asked gently, noting the past tense. Car accident, Elena said simply. Miguel was only 3. I don't really remember him, Miguel admitted. Just impressions. The sound of his laugh. The smell of his cooking. He played guitar, Elena added, glancing at her son. Not professionally, but he loved music. That's where Miguel gets it from. As they shared stories over pasta and wine, soda for Miguel, Sophia found herself talking more openly than she usually did. She told them about her mother who had left when Sophia was 8, choosing a life of travel and new relationships over motherhood. "Do you ever see her?" Miguel asked. "Christmas sometimes," Sophia replied with a shrug she hoped looked casual. "She sends gifts from wherever she is. Last year it was an elephant figurine from Thailand." Elena's eyes held understanding that required no words. For a moment, Sophia felt a connection with them that transcended the usual boundaries of her life. After lunch, they walked along the riverfront, enjoying the warm afternoon. Sophia found herself genuinely curious about their lives outside the mansion. Miguel's studies, Elena's rare days off, their small apartment with the second-hand keyboard where Miguel had taught himself to play. As they paused to watch a street performer playing guitar, Sophia noticed Richard Blackwood walking with a business associate on the other side of the plaza. Her father spotted them at the same moment, surprise registering on his face before he excused himself from his companion and walked over. "Sophia, what a coincidence," he said, glancing curiously at Elena and Miguel. "Dad, I thought you were still in Singapore." Sophia felt oddly caught out, though she'd done nothing wrong. "We just had lunch together." "I see that," her father replied, his expression unreadable. "I got back last night. An opportunity came up that couldn't wait." He turned to Elena and Miguel with a polite nod. "Elena, Miguel, nice to see you enjoying your day off." "Mr. Blackwood," Elena acknowledged with a respectful smile. "How was your trip?" "Productive," he replied, then turned to Miguel. "I've been hearing you at the piano. You've been putting in quite the practice hours." Miguel straightened slightly. "Yes, sir. I appreciate the opportunity very much." Richard nodded, then turned back to Sophia. "Actually, this works out well. I was going to talk to you about something tonight, but since you're all here..." He looked at Miguel. "I've been speaking with an old friend of mine, Dr. Thomas Chen at the National Conservatory." Sophia felt her breath catch. The National Conservatory was one of the most prestigious music schools in the country. "I mentioned your playing to him," Richard continued, addressing Miguel directly. He was intrigued. "They have a special admissions program for exceptional talents who haven't had traditional training. It's quite competitive, but Thomas agreed to arrange an audition for you if you're interested." Miguel stared at him, speechless. "An audition?" Elena finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "For the conservatory?" Richard nodded. "It would be for next fall's intake. Full scholarship if you're accepted. Thomas owed me a favor, but to be clear, the audition is just that, an opportunity to be evaluated on your merit. No guarantees." Miguel found his voice at last. "Mr. Blackwood, I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything now," Richard replied. "Think it over. The audition would be in 3 weeks. I know it's not much time to prepare, but Thomas can only hold the slot until then." Sophia looked from her father to Miguel, barely able to contain her excitement. "This is amazing, Dad." Richard gave a small, almost embarrassed shrug. "Well, talent should be nurtured. It would be a waste otherwise." He glanced at his watch. "I should get back to my meeting. We can discuss the details later." After her father left, the three of them stood in shocked silence for a moment. "Did that just happen?" Miguel finally asked, looking dazed. Elena had tears in her eyes. "The National Conservatory?" Sophia impulsively grabbed Miguel's hand and squeezed it. "This is it. This is your chance." Miguel's expression shifted from shock to something more complex, hope mixed with fear. "I'd have to prepare. I'd need to select the right pieces, practice for hours every day on You Can Do It," Sophia insisted. "You'll be amazing." "The scholarship," Elena said quietly. "Did he really say full scholarship?" Sophia nodded, understanding why that detail mattered so much. Even with Miguel's talent, the conservatory would have been financially impossible otherwise. "My father doesn't do things halfway," she said. "If he arranged this, it's legitimate." Miguel took a deep breath as if trying to steady himself. "I need to think. This is a lot." "Of course," Sophia agreed, though she couldn't imagine why he wouldn't jump at the opportunity immediately. "Take all the time you need." As they walked back to where Elena had parked their car, Sophia noticed Miguel growing quieter, his expression turning inward. When they said goodbye, his smile seemed forced, distracted. "Is everything okay?" she asked quietly while Elena was getting into the car. "Yeah," he said unconvincingly. "It's just a big decision," Sophia frowned. "But isn't this what you want? To study music professionally?" Miguel looked at her for a long moment. It's complicated, he finally said. I'll see you tomorrow, okay? As Sofia watched their car drive away, she couldn't understand Miguel's hesitation. Her father had just offered him the opportunity of a lifetime, a chance most young musicians would do anything for.
Why wasn't he thrilled?
The next day, Miguel didn't come to practice on the piano as usual, nor the day after. By the third day, Sofia sought out Elena, finding her folding linens in the laundry room. Is Miguel okay? She asked without preamble. He hasn't been by to practice. Elena's expression was tired, worried. He's struggling with the decision. What decision? Sofia asked, genuinely confused. The audition is an opportunity, not a commitment. What's there to decide? Elena set down the towel she was folding and faced Sofia directly. Miss Sofia, in your world, opportunities don't come with sacrifices. In ours, they always do. What do you mean? Miguel is in his second year of business school, Elena explained patiently. He's doing well. He has a clear path to a stable career. The conservatory would mean starting over, pursuing a dream that might never pay the bills. Sofia hadn't considered this perspective. But he loves music. And he's so talented. Yes, Elena agreed softly. But love and talent don't always keep a roof over your head. She picked up another towel, her movements precise and efficient. He's always been the practical one, taking care of me as much as I take care of him. Suddenly, Miguel's hesitation made sense. He wasn't afraid of the audition. He was afraid of choosing passion over practicality, of risking a secure future for an uncertain one. What do you think he should do? Sofia asked, Elena's hand stilled. I think, she paused, choosing her words carefully. I think he should follow his heart. But it has to be his decision. Not yours, not your father's, and not mine. Sofia nodded slowly, understanding the weight of the choice Miguel faced. Thank you for explaining. I think I need to talk to him. That evening, she drove to the address Elena had reluctantly provided. The apartment building was small but neat, located in a working-class neighborhood across town. Sofia felt conspicuous as she climbed the stairs to the third floor and knocked on apartment 3B. When Miguel opened the door, surprise registered on his face. Sofia, what are you doing here? You disappeared, she said simply. I was worried. He hesitated, then stepped back to let her in. Sorry about that. I've had a lot on my mind. The apartment was modest but comfortable. A small living room connected to a kitchen, with 2 doors leading presumably to bedrooms. In the corner stood the keyboard Elena had mentioned, much smaller and simpler than Sofia had imagined. So this is where it all started, she said, gesturing to the keyboard. Miguel nodded, a small smile touching his lips. Not exactly a Steinway. Can I sit? Sofia asked, indicating the worn but clean sofa. Of course, Miguel replied, suddenly remembering his manners. Do you want something to drink? Water? Tea? I'm good, Sofia said, watching as he sat in the armchair across from her. I talked to your mom. She told me why you've been avoiding the mansion. Miguel sighed, running a hand through his hair. I wasn't avoiding you. I just needed time to think. About the audition. About my whole future, he corrected. It's not as simple as it seems, Sofia. The small apartment felt quieter than the grand rooms of the Blackwood mansion, but somehow more alive. Family photos lined the walls and a vase of fresh flowers brightened the coffee table. Sofia sat on the edge of the sofa, watching Miguel struggle to find the right words. I've spent my whole life being practical, he finally said. When other kids were going to parties or playing sports, I was studying or working. Everything I've done has been about building a stable future. And music? Sofia asked. Where does that fit in? A small smile touched Miguel's lips. Music was always separate, something just for me. My escape. But it could be more, Sofia insisted. You heard what my father said. The conservatory would be amazing, Miguel finished for her. A dream come true. But dreams don't pay bills, Sofia. The scholarship would cover tuition, she pointed out. And what about after? Miguel leaned forward, his expression earnest. Do you know how many talented musicians end up waiting tables or teaching piano to kids who don't want to learn? How many never make a living with their music? Sofia hadn't considered this. In her world, pursuing your passion was encouraged, expected even. The practical concerns of making ends meet had never factored into her decisions. So you're going to give up without even trying? She asked, trying to understand. You won't even audition? Miguel sighed, running a hand through his hair. I didn't say that. I'm just thinking it through. My mom has worked so hard her whole life. When I graduate with my business degree, I can get a good job. I can take care of her for a change. And what about taking care of yourself? Sophia asked softly. What about your happiness? Miguel laughed, but there was no humor in it.
Happiness is a luxury, Sophia.
Security comes first. The words hung in the air between them, a stark reminder of their different worlds. Sophia looked around the small apartment again, noticing details she'd missed before. The careful mending on the throw pillows, the stack of textbooks on the side table, the worn spots on the carpet. Everything maintained with care but stretched to last. What does your mom think? She asked finally. She says to follow my heart, Miguel replied with a small smile. But she would work herself to the bone to support whatever I choose. That's who she is. Sophia nodded, thinking of Elena's quiet strength. She loves you, which is why I can't be selfish, Miguel said firmly. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the sounds of the city continued. Car horns, distant music, the rumble of the bus passing by. Life moving forward while Miguel stood at a crossroads. Can I ask you something? Sophia said suddenly. When you're playing the piano, how do you feel? Miguel's expression softened. Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Like everything makes sense. And when you're studying business administration? He didn't answer right away. I feel like I'm doing the right thing. The responsible thing. Those are different feelings, Sophia pointed out gently. Not everyone gets to build a life around feelings, Sophia, Miguel replied. But there was no bitterness in his tone. Some of us have to make practical choices. Sophia stood up and walked to the keyboard in the corner. She ran her fingers lightly over the plastic keys, so different from the ivory and wood of the Steinway. You know what I think? Miguel raised an eyebrow. I have a feeling you're going to tell me. I think you're afraid, she said simply. Not of failing, but of succeeding. Because if you succeed, it means you could have had this all along. It means the boundaries you thought were fixed might actually be movable. Miguel stared at her, surprise evident in his expression. That's not what I expected you to say. Sophia shrugged. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've watched you play. When you're at the piano, you become someone else, someone confident, someone who knows exactly who they are and what they want. She paused. I envy that, you know. You envy me? Miguel asked incredulously. You have everything. I have things, Sophia corrected him. It's not the same. They fell silent again, the weight of unspoken thoughts filling the space between them. The audition is in 3 weeks, Sophia finally said. Why not just try? If you get in, you can decide then whether to accept. If you don't try, you'll always wonder. Miguel looked out the window, considering her words. I'd need to practice every day. The piano is yours whenever you want it, Sophia assured him, hope rising in her chest. And I'd need to select the right pieces. Something that shows technical skill but also musicality. I can help, Sophia offered. I mean, I don't know much about classical music, but I can listen, give feedback. A small smile tugged at Miguel's lips. You really want this for me, don't you? I want you to have the chance to choose, Sophia replied honestly. Not everyone gets that chance, Miguel nodded slowly. Okay, I'll audition. He held up a hand when Sophia's face lit up. But I'm not promising anything beyond that. One step at a time. One step at a time, Sophia agreed, unable to keep the smile from her face. Starting tomorrow? Starting tomorrow, Miguel confirmed. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of music and preparation. Miguel practically lived at the piano, working through his selected pieces with focused intensity. He chose Bach's Prelude in C minor to showcase his technical precision, Chopin's Ballad No. 1 to demonstrate emotional range, and his own composition, Mother's Hands, to reveal his creativity. Sophia arranged to have the music room to themselves most afternoons. She sat quietly during his practice sessions, occasionally offering encouragement or asking questions that helped Miguel articulate his interpretation of the pieces. Sometimes Elena would slip in after finishing her work, sitting with tears in her eyes as she listened to her son play. Richard Blackwood stopped by occasionally, nodding in approval at Miguel's progress. He arranged for a piano tuner to ensure the Steinway was in perfect condition and provided Miguel with information about the conservatory's programs and faculty. The night before the audition, Sophia found Miguel still at the piano well past midnight, his fingers moving mechanically over the keys, his eyes tired but determined. "You need to rest," she said gently from the doorway. "You're ready?" Miguel stopped playing and flexed his fingers. "What if I'm not good enough? What if I make a fool of myself?" Sophia walked over and sat beside him on the bench. "Do you remember the first time you played for me? When I asked you to just try it for fun?" Miguel grimaced. "How could I forget?" "You were so smug." "I was," she admitted with a laugh. "And then you started playing and I felt about 2 inches tall. You silenced a room full of wealthy, self-important people with your music, Miguel. Tomorrow won't be any different." He took a deep breath. "I hope you're right." "I know I'm right," Sophia insisted. "Now go home and sleep. I'll pick you up at 9. The morning of the audition dawned clear and crisp. Sophia arrived at Miguel's apartment to find him pacing nervously, dressed in black pants and a white button-down shirt. Simple but elegant. Elena hugged him tightly before they left. "Play from your heart," she whispered. "The rest will take care of itself." The National Conservatory was housed in a beautiful, historic building downtown. Its grand entrance hall featured marble columns and a domed ceiling, painted with scenes of classical muses. Miguel stared up at it all, his expression a mixture of awe and nervousness. "Impressive, isn't it?" said a friendly voice. They turned to find a tall man with silver hair and kind eyes approaching them. "You must be Miguel Reyes. I'm Dr. Thomas Chen." Miguel straightened up and shook the man's hand. "Thank you for this opportunity, sir." "Richard speaks very highly of your abilities," Dr. Chen said. "I'm looking forward to hearing you play." He glanced at Sophia. "And you must be Miss Blackwood." Sophia nodded. "Is it okay if I wait for Miguel? I promise to drive him home afterward." "Of course," Dr. Chen replied. "The audition room is just down this hall. There are seats outside where you can wait." As Dr. Chen led Miguel away, Sophia called after him, "Remember why you play." The wait seemed endless. Sophia scrolled through her phone without really seeing anything, her mind on Miguel in that audition room playing for his future. What if Dr. Chen didn't see what she heard in Miguel's music? What if all this hope led to disappointment? After what felt like hours but was probably only 45 minutes, the door to the audition room opened. Miguel emerged, his expression unreadable. Dr. Chen followed, deep in conversation with another faculty member. Sophia jumped to her feet. "How did it go?" she whispered as Miguel approached. Before he could answer, Dr. Chen called over. "Miguel, could we have another word before you leave?" Miguel glanced at Sophia, then walked back to where the professors waited. Their conversation was too quiet for Sophia to hear, but she watched Miguel's body language closely, the way he stood straighter as they talked, the slight nod of his head, the firm handshake at the end. When he returned to her side, his eyes were bright with an emotion Sophia couldn't quite identify. "Well?" she demanded as they walked outside. "What happened?" "What did they say?" Miguel took a deep breath of the cool autumn air. "They offered me a place." "They what?" Sophia practically shouted, grabbing his arm. "Already? Without making you wait? That's amazing." A slow smile spread across Miguel's face. "Full scholarship starting next fall. Dr. Chen said my technique needs refinement, but my musicality is..." He seemed embarrassed to continue. "Your musicality is what?" Sophia pressed. "Extraordinary," he said. "Especially my original composition." Miguel shook his head in disbelief. He asked if I'd written anything else. "I knew it." Sophia threw her arms around him in an impulsive hug. "I knew they'd see how talented you are." Miguel hugged her back briefly before stepping away, his expression growing serious. "I still have to decide if I'm going to accept." Sophia's excitement faltered. "You're still not sure?" "I told Dr. Chen I needed a few days to think about it," Miguel explained as they walked to Sophia's car. "It's still a big decision, changing my whole path." "But it's what you love," Sophia said, trying to understand his hesitation. Miguel nodded slowly. "It is, but I need to talk to my mom and really think about what this means for our future." They drove in silence for a while, the city passing by outside the windows. Sophia wanted to argue, to convince Miguel to seize this opportunity, but she held back. This was his life, his choice. She had done what she could by helping create the opportunity. When they reached his apartment building, Miguel turned to her before getting out. "Thank you, Sophia. Not just for today, but for everything. For seeing something in me that I wasn't sure was there." "It was always there," Sophia said simply. You just needed a chance to show it. 3 days later, Sophia sat in the music room, flipping through a magazine without really reading it. Miguel hadn't been by to practice, and she'd resisted the urge to text him, wanting to give him space to make his decision without pressure. The door opened, and she looked up to find both Miguel and Elena standing there. "Hey," Sophia said, setting down her magazine. "I was wondering when I'd see you again." "We wanted to tell you together," Elena said, her eyes shining with barely contained emotion. Miguel stepped forward, his expression more peaceful than Sophia had ever seen it. "I'm going to accept the offer from the conservatory." Sophia jumped to her feet. "Really, you're sure?" He nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "I talked it over with my mom, and I did a lot of thinking. You were right. If I don't try, I'll always wonder what might have been." Elena stepped forward and took her son's hand. "Music is his gift. His father would want him to use it." "What about your business degree?" Sophia asked. "I'll finish this semester," Miguel explained, "then transfer my general credits to the conservatory next fall. It's not completely starting over." "And your mom? The practical concerns?" Sophia glanced at Elena, who was watching her son with undisguised pride. "We'll figure it out," Miguel said confidently. "I can still work part-time, and maybe someday my music will support us both." "It will," Sophia said firmly. "I know it will." Elena squeezed her son's hand. "I've spent my life doing practical things, Miguel. Now it's time for you to do something beautiful." Sophia felt her heart swell at the love between mother and son, at the courage it took for both of them to embrace this uncertain path. "There's something else," Miguel said, turning to Sophia. "Dr. Chen wants me to start studying with one of the professors privately, before the official program begins. Just once a week to build a foundation." "That's amazing," Sophia said. "When do you start?" "Next month," Miguel replied. "And I was wondering if you'd come with me. To the first lesson, I mean. For moral support." Sophia felt oddly touched by the request. "Of course. I'd be honored." As the three of them stood in the music room where it had all begun, Sophia reflected on how much had changed in just a few months. She had invited Miguel to play the piano as a thoughtless amusement, and discovered not just his extraordinary talent, but a whole world beyond her privileged bubble. Elena looked around the room with a soft smile. "Life takes strange turns, doesn't it? If you hadn't asked Miguel to play that night—" "If I hadn't been such a spoiled brat, you mean," Sophia said with a self-deprecating laugh. "We all have our moments," Elena replied kindly. "It's what we learn from them that matters." Miguel moved to the piano and ran his fingers lightly over the keys. "I think I'll always remember this as the place where everything changed." "Play something," Sophia urged. "To celebrate your decision." Miguel sat down at the bench and began to play, not a classical piece this time, but something light and hopeful, full of joy and possibility. As the music filled the room, Sophia caught Elena's eye and they shared a smile of understanding. Sometimes, Sophia thought, the most important things in life come from the most unexpected beginnings. A thoughtless request, a moment meant to embarrass, a chance to see someone really see them for the first time, and in that seeing to discover something about yourself as well.